the second video on the left, bottom half of the screen here, I go into depth analyzing the original performance by Miss Mag 822, in which he works with 5 piles of 5 cards each. And then within this video here, I also first look at 4 piles of 4 cards each. Okay, so let's look at each of those in turn. So what we're doing here is we're essentially doing the same thing that we just did, but now we're going to have 4 piles of 4 cards each. So there we go. There's 4 there, 4 here, and 4 here. And then these are random. These can be randomly dealt to the table by the spectator. That's the important thing. There's no setup to this at all. There's no trickery with the cards in any way. The spectator is freely choosing these cards, okay? So as the performer, I have no idea what these cards are, okay? So what does it look like again? Well, if you watch the video on the bottom left-hand side of the screen, what it looks like is each of these is turned face up, and the spectator is free to choose any one of these as their card from pile 1. And they would jot that down on their piece of paper, okay? They do the same thing for pile 2. They just randomly choose whichever card they would like or whichever speaks to them. And they would jot down the identity of that card as their chosen card from pile 2. And they repeat that for pile 3 and pile 4, okay? Now, after that's done, these packets are randomly stacked by the spectator, truly randomly stacked. And then we go through extensive mixing and, quote, randomization of the packet, okay? And then after all of that is done, the cards are again put out into sets of 4 cards each. And with those cards now face up, you ask the spectator, well, which pile contains your first selection? The moment they tell you which of the 4 piles contains their first selection, you know with certainty what that card must be. And then you ask them, which pile contains your second selection? And the moment they tell you which pile contains their card, you know what their second selection is, and so forth for the 3rd and 4th piles. Okay, so the actual procedure itself is the same as that used for 3 piles of 3 cards each. So let's take a look at that. So now imagine we have 4 piles of 4 cards each. For me to randomly choose or guess the spectator's first card in the first pile, I have a 1 out of 4 chance of doing that at random. The same thing holds for the second pile and their second selection, their 3rd selection, and their 4th selection. So the probability that I would correctly guess all 4 spectator-chosen cards is 1 divided by 256. Well, in terms of surprisal value, this becomes log base 2 of 256, which is exactly equal to 8 bits of surprisal. Okay, so how do we interpret that? We interpret it in terms of ordinary coin tosses. So imagine having 8 fair coins, tossing them high up into the air, while in the air you say all of the coins are going to land heads up. And they do. So that gives you a sense of the degree of surprise you would experience or a spectator would experience in watching the performance read 4 minds at once, okay? So essentially we went from 5 bits of surprisal for read 3 minds at once up to 8 bits of surprisal, okay? Now the original read 5 minds at once, of course, will have a larger surprisal value still. So once again, this involves 5 piles of 5 cards each. The spectator's free to randomly choose these. I'm just setting out cards that you can kind of imagine what this would look like. Okay, so 5 piles of 5 cards each, randomly dealt to the table. And then the spectator goes through. So let's go ahead and we'll just put them in some order. In fact, maybe we'll have to go like way up here and then down here. I'm just trying to fit them within camera view here so you can see them. Okay, there. And then maybe this one down here, I guess. Okay, so what would be done once again is this pile, the identities of the cards would be shown, and the spectator on a piece of paper, preferably. Now, what is nice is if you happen to have 5 spectators or more, you can assign 1 pile to 1 spectator. And so that way they only have 1 card to remember. Now, if you only have 1 spectator, they can just, on a piece of paper, write pile 1, and then maybe they randomly choose the Queen of Hearts. They do the same thing for pile 2, 3, 4, and 5. These piles of 5 cards each are then randomly stacked by the spectator. They can decide how this is done. And then, as done in the original performance, and my explanation and exploration of this principle, this packet now is just randomly mixed. It's mixed thoroughly, at least in the minds of the spectator. Okay, and that's the key. It is convincingly mixed, but because of the principles taught on the Hidden Structures channel, it ends up that we still know enough about this packet to be able to finish in the way we hope to. Okay, so then these are put out into, so it's been mix, and then 5 piles of 5 cards each again. Okay, and then we do the same thing where each pile is turned face up so you can see them all. And then you ask the spectator which pile contains your first selection. And the moment they tell you which of the 5 piles contains their first card, you know without a shadow of a doubt what card they chose for that first pile. You can immediately name it. And that's true for the second, third, fourth, and fifth card that they selected. Okay? Well, the probability here now, if we have 5 piles of 5 cards each, the chance that I, as the performer, would correctly guess the spectator's freely chosen card is 1 out of 5 for each of the 5 piles. Well, this comes out to be a probability of 1 divided by 3,125. The Surprisal value now is 11.61 bits, which I guess we could round to 12. 12 bits of Surprisal. Now, fairly recently, I performed this exact performance here, this exact routine, to one of my math classes, and I wish all of you were there to see and hear their reactions when I went through and nailed every single selection from each of those 5 piles. In fact, I remember hearing at least 2 gasps, like, what the heck? And of course, it was followed with, you've got to show us how that was done.